So the last chapter that I freaking love so much is called The Horror of Hormak. Don't know if I said it right, but it's by John Epler, and this was one of my favorite stories because I felt so much for the characters, and I don't know, I just love anything about wardens and elven lore. So this story starts off with two wardens, Ramesh and Lesha. Ramesh is an older warden and Lesha has only been a warden for 2 years. Ramesh is almost at the time of where his calling should be coming upon him, but they are both sent to investigate missing wardens at a mining operation, and Ramesh has like a personal connection to Jorvis, who is one of the wardens missing. So Ramesh feels personally affected by this mission, like he wants to find him. But they are walking into the Navaran forest, tracking the wardens. As they're walking through the forest, Lesha's horse gets spooked by something. She gets knocked off her horse and the horse gallops away. So Ramesh sees if Lesha's alright, which he is, and then he goes after her horse. So as he's catching up to the horse, his own horse kind of backs up and freaks out, and he kind of calms the horse down, and then he hears all these noises, like weird, like it's a big animal but human noise, and then he hears like a few crunches and then silence. So he goes towards it, of course, as any warden would do, and he comes into like a clearing with some mud and no remains of Lesha's horse there, so there's nothing at all to say that the horse like is dead. He doesn't know what kind of animal could have done this. Whatever it is, it broke like a tree in half, so it's big, and he doesn't really have any answers. He just knows that something big came through, and Lesha's horse could be alive or could be eaten by this animal, but Lesha's horse did have some of their supplies on it, so now they're down one horse. He also smells kind of like seaweed and like the ocean, which he can't explain what kind of animal this could have been. But as he goes back, he rides back to Lesha to find her with a warden on the floor. So he goes up to Lesha, and Lesha explains that the warden's not making any sense, something's wrong with her, she seems kind of like something's not right. So Ramesh goes over to see for himself, and she's just like talking crazy, like speaking. It almost reminded me of oh, I forgot their name, the dwarf that the brood mother infected in Dragon Age Origins, and she's just like talking about don't make me go back there, but she's also like giggling and screaming and saying just things that aren't making sense, but obviously she's being traumatized by something. Ramesh realizes this is one of the wardens from the mining operation, and then as he says her name, she looks at him and her eyes have been clawed out, and it looks like she's done this herself. So she's obviously very sick, and just they don't know what to do. So the warden who's infected pushes Ramesh and then runs off, and as she runs off, Lesha uses a sleep spell on the warden. I think her name's Friedel or something, and then that puts her to sleep, and Ramesh is kind of freaking out now, because whatever's done this to the warden, this could have done it to Jorvis. So they decide to make a little bedroll and tie rope around the sick warden, and they kind of just keep her there and decide to camp there for the night. So they decide to just stay overnight with her. Ramesh takes the first watch and nothing really happens. He kind of sees the sick, infected warden mumbling to herself. He can't quite make out what she's saying, as he goes closer to her, she just like goes quiet, but nothing really happens. And then it's time for Lesha's watch, so she gets up and notifies Ramesh, and he goes in the camp. Before he goes to sleep, he pulls out like a little note with a little string on it, and it's a note from Jorvis saying that we will wait for each other, and like we won't give up on each other. And it's very sweet and very cute, very sad, because they're both wardens, so they have their duty, but you know, if you want to have a relationship with someone, it's very hard. If you care for someone, it's very hard knowing what their end will be, and what their end could be at any time, and what they go through. So he just reads that note, and then he falls to sleep. He struggles, but he finally falls to sleep, and he has a nightmare about Jorvis looking like the infected warden, missing his eyes and just like smiling at him. And he awakes to like a sound, and he grabs his knife. He walks out, and the campfire is still lit. Lesha's nowhere to be seen, and the infected warden has ran off somewhere. There's like a grey liquid like along the path into like a forest, so he follows that, and there he sees the infected warden. She has chewed through her ropes and chewed through her arms and just through her arteries and everything, and she's obviously dead, and he's just disgusted and saddened by that this was a warden's fate. And he goes to he sees something in her throat, so he goes to like pry her throat, her mouth open, and all this grey liquid comes out, more grey liquid, or any liquid that should be able to fit into a human body. So it just keeps coming out and out. So whatever this liquid is, it's infected her. And Lesha comes out of the woods, and she throws up, and he says like, where were you? She said she was going to get some wood for the fire, and he says that we should give the infected warden a proper burial because that she was one of us and she died. Obviously a horrible fate, but she's still one of us. So after that, they decide that they're going to keep going, because now that it's just gotten more serious. If Jorvis and the other wardens are alive, like, you know, they could be, who knows what kind of pain they could be in. So it's even more serious to go and get them now, even though it's more of a risk of death and getting infected. Like, Ramesh has a personal connection to finding Jorvis and this mission, so he knows he's going forward, and Lesha, like a great warden that she is, agrees to go with him. So they end up going further into the forest, going towards a mining operation. They find like a little village that's been empty. There's nothing much left of it. Ramesh does see some of the same like tracking and footprints, whatever it was that was in the clearing he had saw before, when Lesha's horse had gone missing. But he doesn't say anything to Lesha because he doesn't even know what he saw, and he doesn't want to freak her out after what just happened. So he kind of keeps that to himself. They keep moving until they find an abandoned camp where there is just darkspawn everywhere, blood everywhere, but no human bodies or blood anywhere. So they know that there had been a fight here, and that it is probably the wardens that were fighting the darkspawn. So they look around for any kind of anything linked to the wardens that they can find, and Lesha finds like a big hole in the ground that has like a staircase spiraling down. Ramesh sees that there are warden bloody footprints going down into the ground, so he decides, and Lesha decides, that they're going to go after them. And inside there's obviously dwarven architecture. It's the deep roads. They finally come into like a open space where they find another camp, and then they find some food that is still a bit fresh, but it's gone a little bit dry. So they know that this that the wardens had been here not that long ago. And they find some old dwarven skeletons with dwarven armor, which means like there might have been a dwarven expedition down here as well. They find some lyrium charges that have not been lit yet, and then they're looking for more evidence of where the wardens could have went, because they can't find any way out. It's just everything's blocked, so there's only one way in and one way out. And then Lesha sees over on some pillars some marking, and she said that these are dwarven markings, and Ramesh goes over to them and recognizes them as warden markings that wardens leave in the deep roads. On one of the pillars it says like how many days they're expected to be there. On the second pillar it's how many men are with them, and then on the third pillar the markings are when they're expected back. And Ramesh realizes on the third pillar that they're not coming back, so they said that they're not coming back, they don't expect to be back, and he kind of freaks out about this because he wants to find Jorvis. Lesha sees that the markings also lead somewhere, so she follows them along and finds that on the last pillar there's no like it's just very clean, so it looks like there's nothing there, so something must have moved or something must have happened there. So they work out that it's a door and there are like grooves to unlock it. So Ramesh and Lesha unlock the door with like a boulder, and then they go inside, and when they get inside it like reeks even more of the smell that Ramesh has been smelling, so they know that they're going the right way. It kind of leads like a spiral pathway going down, and as they're going down they're realizing there's like stonework on the walls, carvings on the walls, and at first it wasn't very clear, but the further they go down it becomes a bit more clearer and they can kind of make out what it is. Lesha kind of looks at it and says that these are dwarven markings, she believes. It shows a supplicant, a priestess, and a monster. And as Ramesh looks at it closer, he goes, these kind of look like elves. And when I heard that, I was like, yes. So they keep going down and they follow these like stonework carvings, and they kind of see that as the carvings go on, the supplicant and the monster are changing. The priestess is staying the same, and something that Ramesh notices is that it seems like her smile's getting bigger, like she's getting happier as the two supplicant and monster are changing. They find themselves at these big stone doors, which they kind of know, like Ramesh has a bad feeling about entering these doors, but he wants to find Jorvis, so he's not giving up, and Lesha agrees to go with him. So they open the doors and it opens up to a big room, and Ramesh notices again that there's carvings and like little gems on the wall. So he goes over to them and he realizes that this is actually elven architecture, because he's seen elven architecture in the deep roads many times, so he recognizes them. And he looks at the murals, he sees different sets of carvings. So one of them is like Hala, he recognizes them to be Hala pulling Aravals and people praying to like a priestess. These are just like kind of normal carvings, and he sees like this symbols of like a Hala everywhere. And then as he goes on, he sees the carvings changing a bit to where the Hala have changed, and they're kind of like weird looking and bigger, and their horns are weird. And instead of like in the carvings before, it looked like they were like curing disease out of the people, and now it looks like they're infecting the people with disease, and it looks like the Aravals are like prisons and they're infecting people. So he kind of is disgusted by this, and he just knows that something bad is coming and this place isn't good. Also, something that I forgot to mention before is when they were in the Deep Roads room where the lyrium charges were, they got attacked by darkspawn, and the darkspawn were all weird looking. Like one of them was an emissary with like bat wings, one of them had like a scorpion's tail, one of them had a bit too human face, one of the faces were a bit angular, like something changed and is like mutated within them. So these darkspawn and whatever was in down these in the deep roads was obviously something like Ramesh has never seen before. So after they're in this room with these elven carvings, they see a little doorway that they know must lead into where whatever's down here must be in there. So Lesha agrees to go with him again. So both Lesha and Ramesh open the door. As they open the door, they see all these mutated creatures. So it's like I can't say it, Vaterel with like a Hulla head. It's so funny reading this because I was like trying to imagine it in my head. I'm like, what? Like it'd be so weird and so kind of cool to see this. But it's like all these different creatures but like mixed together. So like a Hormak with like a scorpion tail, and like a spider but with like snakes. Instead of eyes, it had like snakes' heads. So they just see all these different mutated creatures and they hide behind like a boulder. They watch as like a Hormak or something goes into this big pool of grey liquid in the middle of the room, and a green yellow lyrium crystal suspended above it. So the Hormak goes into the green grey liquid and is like covered by it, and then emerges as a cocoon and then breaks open, and it's now like a Hormak with like a drake's body. So it's like a little dragon. I can't even imagine this like in game, trying to imagine what this would look like. It'd be kind of funny. But yeah, so Ramesh realizes like these are too many. This is like an army breeding down here. We can't take all of these on. We should get out and go warn the other wardens of what's down here. So as they go to leave, Lesha, who got hurt in the stomach from the fight before, she kind of trips over, and then her staff, or she makes like a noise and it echoes through the room. So all the creatures are now aware of that they're in the room. So now they got to prepare for battle. As they're getting ready, the boulder moves that they're hiding behind, and this big like centipede, like giant creature emerges, and it's like really, really tall. And then as Ramesh is staring at it, its face is like kind of, it merges to be like a human, but very creepy looking. And it turns out to be Jarvis. It's like his face, but it's all like weird looking, and obviously Ramesh is like mortified seeing, you know, someone he loved like being turned into something like that, and he like has tears coming down his eyes just staring at it. And then the creature kind of mimics a human voice and speaks to Ramesh saying his name, and then Ramesh is like, what have they done to you? And then he kind of like, he says something like, she did this, or you got to escape from her. He keeps mentioning a she, which I thought was very interesting. And then Ramesh says, who is she? Like, who are you talking about? But then Jarvis's voice kind of fades and turns into like an insect kind of voice, and says that he's like asking the wrong questions. And then Jarvis comes back and says, you've got to destroy the lyrium crystal, get out of here, run now. And then Jarvis fades away again, the insect voice comes back, and then they attack, then they go into battle with it. And all the other creatures are attacking them as well. Lesha puts up like a shield trying to block the creature and the other darkspawn's attack. Lesha is struggling and she can't hold up her shield and she's getting hurt, so Ramesh goes over to her trying to help her, but then there's just too many of them. The creatures like giant. So Ramesh kind of thinks this is like where he dies, this is it. Lesha gives Ramesh kind of like a look, and like he sees her plan because she knows she's not going to make it out of this. So she looks at the lyrium crystal, and she just with her magic she pushes her magic towards the lyrium crystal, and just and the blast like sends Ramesh flying, and like every boulders start coming down, and like the whole like cabin room is everything's caving in, and then Ramesh wakes up and he's still okay, and he sees like Lesha didn't survive this, and he knows he just has to get out of there. As he's getting up and walking out of the room, he can hear like boulders and little rocks falling, so the creature is still alive and it's getting up. So he starts running out of there as fast as he can. He's still like hurt, but he's running as fast as he can. As he's running, he can just hear the creature constantly behind him, like its little insect little legs running and stuff like that. As he comes into the room where the lyrium charges is, he realizes that he's going to use his lyrium charges to blow up the cabin. And he uses his little note that he had from Jorvis and the little string. He waits for the creature to come in, and the creature comes in the room and everything's falling apart and going crazy, and Ramesh is just waiting for the creature to come close enough to light these lyrium charges. The creature comes close enough, he lights the lyrium charges, and runs up the spiral as fast as he can, and when he's almost at the top, the lyrium charges go off. He gets sent flying out of from the ground outside, and he can hear the creature like dying and in pain. So now that is all sealed up, he's outside, he made it, he's alive, but he's just like thinking to himself like he lost Jorvis, he lost Lesha, and now he's got to warn the wardens about what's down there. And something that he thinks to himself, he remembers the images that he saw on the stone, in the gems, of the Aravals and the Hala and the mutations and the disease and the elven people getting diseased. And he realizes that there are actually 11 other places just like this that he saw in the carvings. So this is not the only one, that there are 11 other creatures that could be down there. So yeah, this was such like a good story. Like I was like, oh my god, I was so into it, especially because I love elven lore. Anything about the elves I'm so into, anything about the wardens I'm so into. And what's really interesting to me is that the warden who was infected at the start of the story and Jorvis kept mentioning she, like there's someone who they're powering, or like someone, there's like a she, there's someone in charge of this who they're in fear of. So who are they talking about? Like are they talking about the creature? Are they talking about like an elven noble? Was there like a female in charge of this who did this whole operation who we don't know about? Are they talking about like an elven god? Like did Andril or Gillinan do this? Are they the ones responsible? Because I swear I read something about like mutated animals or something like that in a like about the elven gods in a codex, but that could be unrelated. But like I'm trying to like connect things hoping that it is related. But it's so interesting, like who is this about? Like who is this she? Who did this? Is this like a prequel to a side quest or a mission or a main story in Dragon Age 4? Or like is this set? When is this set? I don't know if there was any hints about that, but like I don't know, like this just like it sets up a story that I want to know more about. So I want to know more about what are these 11 other creatures. Like are we going to be able to explore these other deep road caverns, like in a side quest or something, because I really want to. But yeah, like the way it ended, it just sets up something. And also, like, the elves are obviously involved in this, so is it like a separate part of elves who did this? Because, like, knowing, like, the elves destroyed a lot of their culture, and, like, you just have heard a lot of stories about what the elves did to themselves, and what Andrul did to, like, her people, and, like, you hear a lot, or a little bit about, like, how some of the, from Solus, how the elven gods weren't very good people. So, like, what did they do to their people? Or what were their people pushed to do? So, yeah, this was, like, I'm only 3 chapters in. What, like, why am I saying it's my favorite story? But, like, it was so good. And, yeah, so, I've talked for so long. But if you're a Dragon Age fan and you're interested in reading a book, I would definitely recommend you reading this. It is so good. Like, I've only read 3 chapters and I'm already saying it's so good. Like, I've enjoyed 3 of them. Like, it's already worth the money. So I'm just, I don't know, I'm just excited to read more. So thank you so much for watching through this. Damn, I'm really calling on the animals today. Yeah, thank you so much for watching through this or listening through this. I really appreciate it. I'm really passionate about Dragon Age and I really just enjoy talking about it. It's like a therapy to me, and it just puts me in a good mood to be able to express my love for it. So yeah, if you're like interested in reading books, or if you're interested in knowing more about Dragon Age lore, then I definitely buy this book, because I mean, it's Dragon Age, and also the stories are really good. Like, I mean, obviously they're good, but I think, like, people might think, oh, like, I'm not interested in reading books or something like that. But, like, the stories are well worth it. They're not too long, like, they're in short little stories, so it's not like you could just read one story, put it down for like weeks, and then pick up the next story. You can read it whenever you want, because it's not like an ongoing thing. I'm not someone, unfortunately, who reads a lot of books, not because I don't want to, because I am more of a video game person. I like to play the story. But this, like, I felt so into it, and I really wish that it kind of feels like a game reading this, because as I'm reading it, I feel like I'm the main character, and I'm like visualizing the scenes in my head. I'm like, this is so cool. I wonder what would happen next. So yeah, definitely recommend this to any Dragon Age fan. You can buy it whenever you want. You can read it whenever you want. It's just like a nice escape, and it's if you love like Dragon Age and you're really into the lore or knowing what could come for Dragon Age 4, then you definitely want to read this, because it just, I don't know, I know a lot of Dragon Age fans are just like, oh, I want more Dragon Age, I want more, and like, this does it. Before my phone dies, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone involved in writing, editing, and creating this book, because I can't imagine how much work goes into putting together these stories with whatever else is going on in your lives, and just yeah, thank you so much, because not only like as Dragon Age fans or whoever else reads this book, like, is it fun because it's like more Dragon Age lore, more knowledge for us like to go crazy over and fangirl over. It's also like a happy escape for a lot of us, and something positive in our lives to get lost in whenever we need to. So yeah, thank you very much.